they're taking in knowledge of you. John chapter 17 and verse 3. This means everlasting life. They're taking in knowledge of you, the only true God, and of the one whom you sent forth, Jesus Christ. Reading from the New World Translation, the 1983 edition. The 2013 edition says, this means everlasting life. They're coming to know you, the only true God, and the one whom you sent, Jesus Christ. Therefore, their taking in knowledge of you is about a personal relationship with God and knowing God in the absolute sense, according to precise and accurate knowledge. In the New Testament, when the mind is mentioned along with the art, mind refers to the intellect, while art refers to the emotions, desires, and feelings of the inner person. For example, Jesus said, you must love Yahweh, your God, with your whole heart, and with your whole soul, and with your whole mind. Matthew chapter 22 and verse 37. He thus showed that a person's desires, feelings, and emotions must express his love for God, but he must also express that love by the way he uses his mental faculties, as by taking in knowledge of God and Christ Jesus. Right thinking leads to right behaviour. Paul also prayed that the believers, who obviously had some knowledge of God's will, for they had become Christians, to be filled with the accurate knowledge of his will, and in all wisdom and spiritual comprehension. Colossians chapter 1 and verse 9. Such accurate knowledge should be sought by all Christians. Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 15 to 17. Philippians chapter 1 and verse 9. The first letter of Timothy chapter 2 and verses 3 and 4. It is important in putting on the new personality and in gaining peace. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 10. The second letter of Peter chapter 1 and verse 2. The expression accurate knowledge comes from the Greek word epigenos, precise and correct knowledge, or precise and accurate knowledge. It means to become thoroughly acquainted with, to know thoroughly, to know accurately, know well. It also denotes exact or full knowledge and discernment. When wisdom enters into your heart and knowledge itself becomes pleasant to your very soul, thinking ability itself will keep guard over you, discernment itself will safeguard you to deliver you from the bad way. Proverbs chapter 2 verses 10 to 12. These words imply that we must develop our intense desire for accurate knowledge, which can affect the heart and the very soul. Furthermore, it is the foundation for good thinking ability. As I just said before, right thinking leads to right behaviour. Therefore, Gnostic Christianity means being a seeker after accurate knowledge and believing that everything you need to know about God can be found through intellectual reasoning. That is what Gnosticism is. Thus, salvation is intellectual knowledge, or intellectual knowledge is needed for salvation. That knowledge makes men responsible to the judgment seat of Christ, not association with the blood of Christ through baptism. See John chapter 3 verses 18 and 19. The Gospel of John chapter 12 and verse 48. The Gospel of Mark chapter 16 and verse 16. The second letter to the Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 8. At the appearing of Christ prior to the establishment of the kingdom, the responsible, namely those who know the revealed will of God and have been called upon to submit to it, dead and living, obedient and disobedient, will be summoned before his judgment seat to be judged according to their works, and receive in body according to what they have done, whether it be good or bad. It is made very clear that responsibility is based upon understanding, and therefore the statement that those who know the revealed will of God clarifies this matter. This is in accordance with the Scriptures. We must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 10. He that rejecteth me, the word, shall judge him in the last day. The Gospel of John chapter 12 and verse 48. Salvation is based upon a responsible and logical understanding of the truth. Those who are foreign to the gospel, who lack the capability to perceive its responsibilities, or who are unable to comprehend, are outside the sphere of salvation. See Acts chapter 8 and verse 12. Also, man cannot be saved by morality or sincerity without the gospel. Morality and sincerity must be accompanied by an acknowledgement of the gospel for salvation. See Acts chapter 10 verses 1 to 6. The gospel alone cannot save a person without the obedience of faith to Christ's commandments. Obedience to the commandments is a responsibility required of all believers. Salvation will be determined upon the application of faith and obedience. See Revelation chapter 22 and verse 14, Matthew chapter 7 and verse 26, second letter of Peter chapter 2 and verse 21, Matthew chapter 28 and verse 20, Galatians chapter 6 and verse 2.